This episode was sponsored by Payton Beauties. If you ever need hair care needs, jump over to my Instagram, Payton Beauties, and I'd love to help you out.
I'm Kylie.
I'm Payton.
And this is Fires of Change. Hello. Good evening. Today is Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Although by the time you all are listening to this, it's going to be August 29th. Oh my God, I can't talk today. August 29th, 2005, which
2025.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, which is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which is one of our topics that we are going to be discussing today. But aside from that, we're also going to discuss environmental racism and just how, different demographics or different, regions get treated differently when they go through certain things. But as always, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to pass it over to Payton so she can enlighten us about this week's current events.
Thank you, Kylie. Yeah, so obviously our current events lately have been shit on shit on shit. So obviously we're very pro-Roe, women's right to choose. So it's very disappointing that the Trump regime is basically rolling back access to birth control by defunding a lot of places that basically give low-income women and people access to birth control. So women have had access to birth control for about 50 years now. Where they can make their own decisions around that. And it's helped with family planning and allowing women to go to school, to choose their own futures, to just, their right to choose. And this actually, which was shocking, it became widely available in 1960 under Nixon. So weird. But it was called Title X. And so basically it was, again, free contraceptives for low-income people, families, just to help them, make the choice that was right for them. So basically with him defunding a lot of these things, it's leading to 800,000 people being basically they lose their right to get contraceptive because these things are no longer offered. So a lot of people have already lost their contraceptive in a lot of the, red states, even just with abortion bans and stuff like that. But then also there's a lot more people that are at risk for just even getting birth control pills. So first it was like, oh, we're not coming for your right to abortion. Then they did when they overturned Roe v. Wade. And then now it's like, oh, we weren't coming for your birth control, but it's like, again, now they are, which leads me to my second current event, which is super fucking annoying. But we all know the court case Obergefell versus Hodges, and it's better known as the case that made same-sex marriage legal. And so that was in 2015, which is crazy to think about. It was only fucking 10 years ago. But why I'm talking about that is because it's another one of those things that they said we're not coming for that. And they kind of are, because they have had a ask basically for the Supreme Court to revisit the case. So we know how the Supreme Court is basically fucked. So it's just a very scary time that now this could go, and be, overturned again. So that's kind of just what's been going on that we just need to be aware about. So again, what can we do? Call your representatives, say that you don't agree with that. We love to protest, signing petitions. Also, a good thing is if you have money to donate donate to Planned Parenthood, donate to some organizations that are, continuing this fight for us to have access to birth control, because it's a fucking human right. We should be able to decide what we want to do with our bodies. So yeah, if you have any spare money, please. Parenthood is a great organization that helps women, and not even again just with abortions, but birth control, pap smears, STD testing, getting you into connections with, other stuff. It's also for women that are pregnant. They do help mothers. So again, just all around, they help women. So yeah, if you have money, please donate to them.
Yes, thank you so much, Payton, for orienting us on what's going on in these here United States, as they call them. And so in terms of, Hurricane Katrina, as we know, it is one of the, if not, the most destructive hurricanes that has made landfall in the United States. And, many people died, many people were displaced, many people just were, overly traumatized. And so it's always been something of interest to me, just because the way people were treated after going through such a horrible and scary event is really infuriating. And, the fact that so many people were not helped because of, the color of their skin or their socioeconomic status, or, the region of the United States that they were in, is very shameful. But for those who don't know, this storm occurred in 2005, in August of 2005. And again, the 20th anniversary of the storm hitting is August 29th. So a lot of people are, recounting their experiences, and there's lots of documentaries that have come out. For instance, there's a documentary on Hulu called Hurricane Katrina: A Race Against Time, and I recently watched that, and it was very insightful to just again hear people's stories and really just see, because this was 2005. I was 7 in 2005, so I wasn't really I remember hearing about it and knowing that it was something that happened, but it didn't really click. So the documentary is a 5-part series, and I definitely would recommend watching it. It was very eye-opening, but it was also very saddening, again, just to really get more insight into what people were going through. So that's one documentary that I would recommend, as well as Spike Lee's When the Levees Broke. That was a really good one. That's on HBO Max as well. So he interviewed a lot of people who went through the hurricane, and Katrina Babies is another good one. I believe I watched that, but it was long. It was a while back. So anyways, to get into the timeline of things, on August 25th of 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit Florida as a Category 1 storm. And the then governor of the state of Florida issued a state of emergency. And so the next day, on August 26th, the Louisiana governor, Kathleen Blanco, declared a state of emergency, and the National Guard was deployed to the Gulf Coast by Bush. And at this time, Katrina was now a Category 2 storm. The next day, on August 27th, at 5 p.m., the then mayor of New Orleans, Ray Nagin, began a voluntary evacuation. So this is the 29th was a Sunday. So this is Friday night that they are saying that they can, go ahead and evacuate. And so, mind you, at this time, this is a city that, there aren't a lot, not everybody has cars. I feel like in Denver, or, the Denver metro area, it's a very car-centric city. So, everybody has a car, but it's not necessarily, or it wasn't necessarily that way in 2005 New Orleans. So, it's one thing to tell people that they need to leave the area, but it's like, okay, well, I don't have a car. Nobody I know has a car. How am I going to leave? And even if I did have a car, I don't have, money or a place to stay, or I don't have family to go visit. So, where am I going to go? And so, New Orleans is a place, obviously, right on the coast, right in the Gulf of Mexico. And it is a bowl. So hurricanes hop in pretty often, every year. It's just, okay, every year they say, oh my gosh, it's going to be.
They have hurricane parties.
Yeah, so it's just similar to, Colorado where we know okay, in wintertime, we're going to have blizzards, in summertime, we might have tornadoes. It's just, par for the course. So although people knew okay, this is, the meteorologists and the weather people were saying oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. Again, if you have a hurricane every year, it's just
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay here. I'm going to be with my family. We're not going anywhere, especially in a place like New Orleans where a lot of people, own their homes, and it's something that's been passed down from generation to generation. People aren't going to take they want to stick with their homes and with their belongings and things like that, because, they worked hard to get it.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that, who's to say you leave, you come back, everything's okay, or maybe everything's not okay, but you don't have any stuff and you can't even claim your stuff because you weren't there. So I think that's what a lot of people's fears were. So although at this time on the 27th, it was a voluntary, and emphasis on voluntary evacuation, it's if you want to, you can go. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So, people are aware, but they're just thinking, oh, this is just going to be another storm, so we're going to stay. So still on the 27th of August, the governor of Mississippi declared a state of emergency. The next day, on August 28th, Katrina is now a Category 5 storm. And so the mayor has declared a mandatory evacuation, which is the first in New Orleans history. And so the Superdome, as well as the Convention Center, are both listed as refuges of last resort. And the mayor also declared a 6 p.m. curfew. So at this time, 25 to 30,000 people are, or by the end of the night, 25 to 30,000 people are, inside the Superdome. So you're going in there, you're thinking, okay, we're just going to be here for, a couple days, nothing crazy. Let's bring, make sure we have our medicine, make sure we have some food, make sure we have some clothes, nothing too crazy, in and out. Unfortunately, that's not how things unraveled. And so the next day, Sunday, August 29th, Katrina makes landfall at 6:10 a.m. Central Standard Time as a Category 3 on the Gulf Coast, Category 3 storm on the Gulf Coast. And so at 9 a.m., the levee breached. I believe this levee was the 17th Street Canal levee that had breached. Breached meaning, water has gone over the levee. And so the water rushed into, and this water is the Lake Pontchartrain. So because New Orleans is here, there is Lake Pontchartrain here, and then there's the Mississippi River here. So it's water everywhere. Literally, you're in a bowl. So yes, the levee breaches, and then the water starts coming in and is flooding. And so many people have said that throughout, all of these documentaries that I've been watching, I've been seeing a lot of people make videos on TikTok talking about their experiences as well. So many people have said that they heard an explosion, or what sounded like an explosion. So people are saying, oh, that's the pressure of the water and this and that. But back in 1965, there was another hurricane called Hurricane Betsy, and something similar happened. People were reporting hearing an explosion, and then the levees breached, and so all the water flooded in, and so the urban part of New Orleans wasn't hit too badly, but the more of the outskirts was the black parts of town were hit. And so this is very similar to what happened in Hurricane Katrina because, the touristy areas such as the French Quarter, it was not as bad as in areas such as the lower Ninth Ward or St. Bernard's Parish. And so over there in New Orleans, like they have, the Third Ward and the Seventh Ward. And wards are just what they call like their neighborhoods, whereas the parish is what we would call our county. So, so the lower Ninth Ward was really, really, really like horribly decimated by the breach. And so many people believe that it is, it was intentional. Like we're just gonna make sure that this part of town is fucked up so that we can save this part of town, which makes the most money and, whatever the case may be. So I definitely do think that it is, I'm not the type of person who believes in coincidences. So I think that, all of these people hearing a boom and, all of this water coming in, because originally, the storm hit and then people were like, okay, like this wasn't as bad as they were making it out to be. And then the levees broke and causing all of the water from Lake Pontchartrain to, go in. So, I definitely think that the government in this country has done so many things. And so I can't put anything past them. So,
so many things.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched to believe that they would do, something along those lines to further disenfranchise the Black community there. And so let's see. So when all this water, started coming in, a lot of people were stuck either in their attics or on the roof. And so mind you, this is August in Louisiana, very hot, very humid. You're on your fucking roof for 3 days waiting for people to come get you and the help doesn't come.
Yeah.
So back to at 11 a.m., the winds hit 125 miles per hour. And this is specifically in the Biloxi and Gulfport, Mississippi area. And then still on Sunday, the roof of the Superdome was damaged, which obviously was endangering the people who were sheltering inside. So the Superdome lost power, I want to say it was like a day in or 2 days in, something like that. So again, these people are in this big ass enclosed stadium. No electricity. The bathrooms aren't, running as they should. It's hot as fuck. You don't know where your food is at. It's just like a lot of things were happening in the Superdome. And so moving forward to the next day, August 30th at 7 a.m., Katrina was downgraded to a tropical storm as it was passing over Tennessee. At this point, 80% of the city of New Orleans is covered in water. And later in the evening, Governor Blanco orders the evacuation of the Superdome. So all of these people that were in the Superdome, which remind you is, around 25 to 30,000 people, are now being forced to go outside, which there's nothing outside. There's, all of this standing water, all of this debris, just nothing. And again, it's super hot. So just a horrible, horrible situation that keeps devolving even more. And so on August 31st, the governor orders a total evacuation of the city of New Orleans. The Texas governor at the time, Rick Perry, opens the Houston Astrodome for Katrina survivors, and a public health emergency is declared for the states of Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi. And so the next day, September 1st, Mayor Nagin sends out an SOS for help, asking for buses to help get people out of the convention center. Because remember, like I said earlier, this is the city of people who don't, it's not like a car dependent city. And, people don't have, even if it was, like a lot of people are on a lower socioeconomic status. So they have, and even if they did have cars, like the fucking road is flooded. So how are people supposed to leave?
And honestly, I've been there a lot, and everything, once you get into the little town, it's like everything's right there for certain things, but everything is so far and you have to walk through so much like nature on the side of the road. It's not very pedestrian friendly, I would say. So then that even adds like, even if you could walk to get out of somewhere, again, obviously water, but it's the environment already is not helpful for pedestrians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is, at this, they need help to get all of these people out of this environment and, elsewhere. So at this time, and another thing that was an oversight was that people were conflating the Superdome and the convention center. They were thinking it's the same place when it's, excuse me, when it's two different places. And so the FEMA director at the time, who was named Michael Brown, now he was really lambasted or criticized for his handling of the hurricane, just because he didn't handle it. Like on that day he was on, I want to say CNN. I'm not sure exactly what show, but he was being interviewed by somebody, and they had asked him, what are you doing for the people who are stuck in the convention center? And he was like, oh, well, I just figured out that I just heard that there were people at the convention center. Yeah, and it's like, no, and it was later found out that no, he knew that there were people stuck at the convention center even the day before. And so he was just very, like, he wasn't even in the city of New Orleans, which, the city of New Orleans was not the only city that was hit by this hurricane, but I would say it was, one of the cities, it was the major city that was, what am I trying to say?
Like affected the most?
Yeah, it was a major city it was the most major city that was affected the most by it. And so, he wasn't even in New Orleans. Like, he didn't even come to New Orleans.
Oh my
God. He was out.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah, he was just out living his life and out in Baton Rouge at the restaurants eating. And they, there was somebody in the documentary who was like recounting his time, because he was actually on the scene. And so he was emailing with the secretary for the FEMA director. And the secretary was like, oh, well, he needs to make sure that he has all of his time to make sure that he's eating his food, and he's at the restaurant right now, and they have to make sure that they're accounting for, the time it takes for him to get from point A to point B. And, he has to have at least 20 minutes of lunch and this and that. And the person responding, the person responding was like, well, I'm so sorry that I've just been sitting here laying on concrete trying to get comfortable. While, he's trying to get lunch. And I'm so sorry that this has been so inconveniencing to him while he was getting his food. And it's just like, wow, you really don't give a fuck. Like, you just don't care. Mm-hmm. And it really begs the question of, if this had happened in Denver, if this had happened in, Salt Lake City, if this had happened in
super white communities. Yeah.
Like the response would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. So the next day, September 2nd, Congress approves a $10.5 billion aid package, and Bush flies over New Orleans. And so the next day, September 3rd, the National Guard is in the city, and all of the evacuees are removed from the Superdome. And so a lot of these people that were coming in from the National Guard were people who had just come back from Iraq. So they were definitely on edge. And so the directive was that, because at this time, New Orleans is, does have a reputation of being a very, a city that has a lot of crime. I think at that time it was the murder capital of the United States. If it was not number one, it was within the top three, but I do believe it was number one. And so there was this preconception that like, oh, there's all this, lawlessness, and you need to go in and regulate and, the governor did actually say, if you shoot to kill. So it's
Oh
just
my God.
you're telling these people that are here to supposedly, help come and rescue these people who have just undergone a natural disaster. You're telling them
that are not even getting their basic human needs. They're in survival mode. Nothing is being met.
yeah, and you're going in to help these people, but you're being told that you can shoot to kill, and you're there to regulate. So it was just very interesting, the wording of things and like the way that things were handled. Because again, if this was another population, I don't think that would have been said.
No, honestly, I know that wouldn't have been said.
Yeah, so it's just things that make you go, But there was a lieutenant general of the military. His name is Russ Honore. Or Honor. I don't know. It's Honor with an E at the end. So I don't know if it's Honore. I'm not quite sure. And he was instrumental in the military's response to Katrina. So, the military was there. The National Guard was there. I guess, they, I don't know anything about the military and how they do things, but I know that, military kind of directs their people. The National Guard directs their people, but he was there and he was like, you all are going to listen to me because, I'm head honcho. So they were coming in and like pointing their guns at people and just being like really hostile and stuff like that. And he was like, no, like these people, put your guns down. You're here to help. You're passing out food. Why are you shooting? Like,
Where's your humanity?
Yeah, why are you coming at it like that? So he was somebody who was very instrumental in making sure that things were, that things were getting taken care of. So he was really great in, just redirecting and kind of de-escalating things. But there were points where, the police department, as well as particular in this situation, the police department was also doing some interesting things. On September 4th, 5 New Orleans Police Department officers shoot 6 unarmed people on the Danziger Bridge, and 2 of those people were killed. So there were definitely instances of police just, shooting at people or shooting people just, because they could. I remember in the documentary that I had watched, there was a young man who his brother had gotten shot. And so I believe the brother had gone out to, try and get some supplies. And so he ended up getting a call that his brother was shot. And so he like flags down this guy who's driving, and he's like, hey, my brother got shot. Like, can you take us to the hospital? So the guy, tries to take them to the hospital. But of course, they can't really drive. Things are blocked off. So the man that he met was like, hey, I know that there is this like medical station that's set up at this school. The school is closer, so why don't we just go to the medical station? They can, help your brother out. So they get there and they are accosted by these police officers. And so they're like, shooting, like pointing their guns at them, and they're like, put your hands up. And they're like, we need help. Like my brother's, was shot. Like we need help. And so they end up, one of the police officers ends up taking the car. And then I guess he had like flares in his pocket. So he ends up taking the car, parking it somewhere, putting and throwing the flare on the car to like burn it up, because unfortunately those same police officers that they met up with were the police officers who,
oh my God,
shot the brother.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that happened, and there was never any, like, those police officers were never charged,
Shocker.
There was never any repercussions for that. So in this time where, they're supposed to be protecting and serving, especially after something as traumatic and life-changing and horrible as a hurricane, especially a Category 5 hurricane, they are killing people. And what's the word? obscuring their crimes and, stuff like that. And so it was just so much that was going on. And the rhetoric, even like the media was another thing that was just so disgusting. Like these people had gone through one of the worst things, not even in somebody's life, but in a generation.
Yeah.
Right. And they are, going to being bussed off or, flown off to wherever the fuck. And when they get there, they're being referred to as refugees, which is like, if I'm in my country and I'm going to a different place in my country
an
and I've been
American
displaced.
citizen that pays their taxes.
Yeah, I've been displaced. Like, I'm not choosing to leave. I've been displaced. And you're calling me a refugee? So that was crazy. And then when they were talking about like looting, it's just like, this is an emergency. I can't just go to Walmart and swipe my card or give them my cash to buy shit. Like if I need food, if I need Pampers and I need food and I do medicine, what am I supposed to do?
Right. And that's the other thing that, like, I'm glad you brought up, like medication and stuff. Like anyone that would have had a disability in this, like anyone that would need a machine to keep them alive, oxygen, anything like that. Like imagine even how more horrific it was for anyone with disabilities. Like no one was coming for the community as a whole, but then add that onto it and it's even fucking worse.
Yes, and a lot of the people that were a part of the death toll were, people who are elderly or people who were people who had disabilities, or children. People who can't
defend themselves.
Yeah, in regular situations, like it might be hard to, go out and get out of your house to, go do those things if you are elderly or if you do have a disability or if you are a child. So add this situation on top of things like that just makes things that much harder. And so, the fact that people were just doing what they needed to do to survive and the emphasis was put on protecting merchandise and
products.
Products instead of, okay, these people have just gone through something crazy. Like, this is my store, but at the end of the day, people need to make sure that they're eating. So just like the language that people would use are like surrounding, like, oh my gosh, there's so much crime and they're looting and they're thugs and they're this and they're that. And it's just like, what the fuck would you do if you were in the middle of a fucking hurricane and you can't do like,
you don't have access to any basic human needs. And again, we've talked about it before, like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. When you are in survival mode and even you're not even getting those needs met, it does change your brain chemistry. It changes your genes. It's like we've seen it with the Irish people during the Irish potato famine, which that was literally made by the British government. So then we see things like this. And it's like if Kylie was talking about people heard explosions, if this was a man-made thing in any way, it's like, okay, it's another, like it was basically, kind of a famine. People did not eat, did not have water, did not have shelter, did not have access to medical care, basic human needs. Anyone's gonna obviously do what they gotta do.
Yeah, so just the conversation around what people were doing is just very asinine to me because it's just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like law and order, I just feel like law and order doesn't exist in times like that when everybody's just trying to fend for themselves, exactly like you said, trying to make sure that they're getting their most basic needs met. Like fuck a rule, and also I had another direction I was going with that, but I lost my train of thought. But yeah, it was just very interesting that there were so many people that were like, it seemed like eager to have an excuse to, be violent towards people. Like even in those desperate times, like in certain areas, I know in the Algiers part of New Orleans, there was, again, this is from the documentary that I was watching, the Race Against Time. It's on Hulu again. But this man was talking about how he was almost shot because he was, walking back to his home. And this group of white men came up to him and they were like, where they were thinking that he had come from New Orleans. And they were like, basically you should not be here. Like, get to where you're going or else, you don't want to find out what's going to happen to you. So it's just like, even in these crazy, crazy times, like people are still facing racism, and people were, I've heard accounts where people were saying that they weren't rescued because, they were Black. And it's just really crazy how this group of people were treated after going through something so heartbreaking. And so on September 5th, the 17th Street Canal breach was repaired and floodwater was beginning to recede. At this time, the death toll was still unofficial. The next day, September 6th, engineers estimated that it could take up to 80 days to pump out all of the water. And at this point, 20,000 people have been flown out of the Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans. On September 12th, the FEMA director, Michael Brown, resigns over criticism on how he handled Katrina, because he didn't handle it. He was too busy eating in Baton Rouge. And then on October 3rd of 2005, the search for remaining survivors and bodies in Louisiana is suspended. So at this time, the death toll is 964. And so it's crazy to me that only a month after this happened, they're stopping the search, because to this day, there are people still don't know like where their people are. They don't know if they've moved. They don't know if they're dead. They don't know if they just don't know. There's no record of it. And so again, I've been watching a lot of these accounts on TikTok, and there's this specific lady that I follow on TikTok. Her name is Look at Lolly. If you know the girl who said this bitch gonna step on my this bitch gonna step on my toe with the cowgirl fucking boots, bitch disgusting. I met her actually in Denver.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was really cool.
I love that.
I met her just at a dispensary. Yeah, she's really cool.
Ooh, she's extra cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, she was in the Katrina Babies documentary. So, but yeah, she was saying how, I don't know, like when I think of Hurricane Katrina, I definitely think of like the images of the houses with like the X's on them that say, this was however many people were found in here, one was dead or whatever the case may be. She said that to this day, there are still houses that have not been searched. And 20 years later, there are still, dead people in those houses that we don't know about because they haven't been searched. People were just, marking it off without even going inside. And, sometimes people had, when they had left and come back, they're going through the damage and then they're finding their dead loved ones. And it's just like, first of all, to have to come back and see that, your neighborhood, your house, your city is nothing like you've ever seen it, is decimated, is dead. That in and of itself is so horrible. And then to come into your house to find your belongings everywhere and your family heirlooms are broken and all waterlogged, and you don't have your your documents, and you don't have your house that you worked so hard to build, or maybe you didn't build it, your great grandfather built it and it's been in your family for however long, and you come back and that's all nothing. And then you've been looking for your mom, or you've been looking for your dad, you've been looking for your sister, and you don't know where they're at, and then you go in the house and you find them in there, and it's just like, God damn, like how much can a person take? Like I just don't understand how somebody can go through that and then to be called a refugee, and then your insurance company won't give you a payout because you didn't have flood insurance. And even if you did have flood insurance, and you still don't get a payout. And it's just like, it's so the injustice that people underwent is just so like I can't even like it can't even be quantified because it's so horrible and so ugly how these people were treated. And so like even in death, people can't even have like the
Dignity.
the dignity of
respect.
like at least okay, the person was found and they were able to be returned to their family, so like the family can lay them to rest the way that they need to. Like it's just so I don't know. And the fact that there are so many
Inhumane,
people,
like,
and the fact that there's so many people out there who still don't know like where their family members are at. Like it's one thing to know like, oh, they passed away, but you don't know where they're at.
right.
Like that is just so like gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And so in November of 2005, the death toll was now 1,306. And many of the people who had passed away were elderly, were people with disabilities. And at this point, there were 6,700 people that were unaccounted for.
Mm.
And so afterwards, a lot of these survivors were put into these FEMA trailers. And these FEMA trailers were later found to have really, really high levels of chemical formaldehyde in them.
Mm.
So people were complaining of nosebleed, like waking up with a nosebleed, like really, really painful hacking coughs, as well as headaches. And people were complaining about this as early as late 2005 and early 2006. And so they ended up. So it's just like, wow, okay, so you go through a natural disaster that has displaced you and your family, you lost everything, and you're treated like shit, and the government didn't help you. And then you're put into these FEMA trailers, and then you contract fucking some type of terminal disease.
Yeah. Because that's obviously cancerous, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just it's just failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. And
for people that put money into these systems that should have been able to help them,
to protect them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the government there for if not to protect its people?
Right.
So it's just, this is how these things tie into environmental racism, because these things are systemic, right? Certain areas get more funding or have more, green spaces to kind of buffer around these, or buffer from things like hurricanes or erosion and things like that. But certain areas don't have that same endowment, so they may be more heavily hit. And they don't have the resources to like they don't have the resources to not fight against the I don't know what I'm trying to say, but to deal with things. And so obviously racism is a big player in the way that Hurricane Katrina was handled, because New Orleans is a city that is heavily populated by Black people. And so I think people are comfortable with seeing Black people suffering. So it just wasn't like, okay, so what? They're on their roofs and they're, stranded in the water. Like, what does that have to do with me? And so to me, this mirrors, Payton and I have discussed this, but this mirrors like the conversation with AI, and like how people are saying like, oh, we should stop using AI. And they're like, okay, well, because, communities in Memphis are being really adversely affected by this. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, it's not that deep or it's not that serious. And it's like, well, it's easy for you to say that because you're not the one who
is dealing with the consequences.
Yeah. And I think, again, Memphis is another city that is that has a very prominent Black population. So I think people are just comfortable with, you know, people have these connotations of predominantly Black cities of like them being crime ridden and, low, like low quality of life. So it's like, it's already fucked up there. So what's another instrument to fuck things up even more? And so it's just, I know that Elon chose Memphis specifically because of that connotation, because knowing that it is a Black city and like people don't give a fuck. Like, I mean, even with Flint, like, again, another Black city. And how long have they been having issues with their water?
Since
not being able to, not having drinkable water. It's been 11 years. So it's just like people just don't care.
Yeah. And honestly, again, we talk about how everything is connected. And so when we see things like that, we need to look at this as a whole picture. So when we look at the map of the country, these predominant cities that are ignored by the government when these things happen are actually, when you look at it, along the Bible Belt. And then when you compare that to the transatlantic slave trade, you look at where it was most heavily populated with enslaved people. And again, it was along that Bible Belt. So then after we get out of times where people are enslaved, then we look at the rules and the laws against them in the cities. So for instance, we look at redlining. And for people that don't know what redlining is basically the government allowed it, realtors, racist people, all basically, like Kylie said, these things are a structural system that then didn't allow Black people to buy in certain neighborhoods and force them basically all into certain cities. And then when we look beyond further, well, these cities maybe didn't have the best agricultural land. They didn't have access to, things that they needed. But then even further than that, they also have low, like our national federal wage in these cities are very low and they've never raised them. So then when we look at that, then we have to take it a step further. And there's a lot of factories in these cities. And so if you're either going up against a job of minimum wage, which is what, 7 something in the United States, which what the fuck? No one can afford to live off that. No one can even afford to live off $20 an hour, let alone 7. The only other option is then people have to turn to these factory jobs, which some of them do pay well, but they also are linked to very like carcinogenic situations where they're around chemicals and they're around or it's a very high risk job, so they can die very, very easily and things like that. So people are forced to choose between not making ends meet or being forced into these jobs where they're being harmed physically, mentally, and emotionally. So then when we take again that a step further, then they're even more disenfranchised because of natural disasters. Like Kylie said, like the government isn't caring about Black communities. So it's just like over time and over time and over time, what that does to a group of people. And we were talking a little bit, just me and Kylie, about epigenetics and how that can it really does change your DNA. So like back even within like 7 generations or something. So we can see that with, for instance, the Irish potato famine, which was basically Britain was occupying Ireland, and Britain was basically taking all of Ireland's food sources and giving it to the British people. So the Irish people, especially the poor people, were dying, starving. And again, that changed their DNA. So now you could see things like if people have blood pressure problems, diabetes, just things like that, that can really affect someone's health, how they digest food, it changes. So when we look at things like Hurricane Katrina, how that stress and how people were treated, it changed them. It changed everyone around them, and it's gonna have effects for generations and generations and generations. Um, so that's why, again, even when we talked about birth control, 800,000 people are at risk of losing access to birth control. And again, when we look at the Bible Belt, when you bring in religion, these places often for sexual education are going to push things like abstinence, basically abstinence, not having sex. They're not going to be talking about STDs. They're not going to be talking about how to prevent pregnancies. And again, this is by design because they know if people in poor communities are forced to have children because they cannot family plan, it creates them to stay in this loop of poverty, which then they can't get out of. But then again, like we said, it's by design because it will basically create a new workforce for the elite. So when you look at everything as a whole, all the dots connect, and it really is on purpose. And like that one saying where it's like, if you think your government would never do that, oh, they did. Because again, you look at, I believe it was Tulsa with the Black Wall Street when that was burnt down. There was the Tuskegee experiments where they basically gave Black people like syphilis and like other stuff, and they had no idea. So when you're constantly not only not taken seriously in these situations, but then you're even like actively being disenfranchised, actively, again, nothing is by accident, it is on purpose. How are people supposed to get out of these things? So environmental racism is like, people don't even realize how deep it goes, but it literally controls every single thing going on around us. Like that's probably one of the biggest factors. Even when you look at police basically patrolling predominantly Black areas more so than white areas, and then they're also systematically told to basically like fear Black people and target Black people. Again, that's another systematic thing that hurts the community.
Yeah, I mean, with police officers, like they started out as people who were, looking for escaped slaves. So it's always inherently been set up on a foundation of, white supremacy and racism.
Yeah.
So, all of these things connect. Nothing is by coincidence or by accident. And all of these systems work together to keep people oppressed and to keep people as, cogs in the machine. And unfortunately, as climate change continues to accelerate, the temperature of the sea is going to continue to rise, which is going to cause, cities like New Orleans, as well as, Miami and what's another one? There's another one but I can't think of,
Even California.
In 50 to 100 years. I don't know if they're still going to be there, and so it is, these natural disasters are just going to continue to become more and more volatile. And so we just really have to be, ready for anything. And especially with the government dismantling the way that we are notified about these things, we really just have to keep things. We have to stay current on our own and not expect that we're going to get notification of these things, unfortunately. And so, it's just really, if there's anybody out there that, you know, has survived Katrina or was affected by Katrina in any way, our hearts definitely go out to you. It is one of the worst tragedies in American history. And that has definitely, like, the aftermath, or the way it was dealt with, you know, impacts that even more. So, yeah, we, you know, rest in peace to all of the people who, unfortunately, you know, whose lives were claimed by Katrina, whether, you know, it was because of the initial storm, or whether it was, you know, there were a lot of people who were walking through water who ended up getting stabbed by things, or ended up getting cut, and then they got an infection in their wound, and then they passed that way, or they passed because they didn't have access to their medicine, or, you know, people were jumping off of their roofs to try and swim and, you know, getting impaled by things. And so there are so many ways that people have, obviously people drowned. Like, there's so many ways that people, you know, passed during this event. And, yeah, every single life that was affected was a life that mattered.
Yeah.
You know, whether that person is still on this earthly plane or not. And, you know, they didn't deserve to go through those things. But, you know, anybody who did make it through, that is a level of strength that is unmatched.
And I want to say that I think the community came back together because of themselves and the community. Like, the amount of pictures I've seen of neighbors helping neighbors, family members helping people out, like their own community out with boats trying to save people. So it really comes down to, we have to save ourselves, because clearly the government doesn't want to help us. So shout out to all the heroes that, like, saved and helped people, all the people in the community that went out of their way, to just be good human beings.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because there was this specific group called the Cajun Navy, and altogether they ended up saving about 10,000 people.
Oh my God.
So yeah, exactly. Like, just, you know, people taking matters into their own hands, saying, fuck it, I'm not going to wait for the government, because clearly they're not coming. I have resources. I'm going to go out and make sure that my neighbors are okay, even if they're people that I've never met from, you know, 2 hours south or whatever. Like, people really felt compelled to, you know, help out their fellow man. And that's really a beautiful thing. Especially because if they hadn't, you know, if they hadn't taken the time, like, you know, the death toll would have been a lot higher. Yeah. So yes, I agree. It's definitely, it's definitely that's one of the good things that came out of it. It was people coming together and just, you know, helping each other, doing whatever they could to, you know, just make the next person's life a little bit easier. So yeah. And, you know, with things that are, we don't know what's coming next. We don't know what's on the horizon, but all we do know is that community is important. In good times and especially in bad. And so,
love your neighbors, make a meal, deliver someone some food. If you know an elderly neighbor can't get out, see if you can get some stuff at the grocery store. Donate to Planned Parenthood. If you don't have time or energy, donate to some type of cause. But yeah,
something that speaks to you, donate to it, because there's, you know, there's a lot of communities in need. So take your pick.
Yeah.
Speaking of picks, we're going to pick Sam.
For Sam's fun fact.
To share his fun fact.
I love being picked. Thank you, Kylie, for picking me. So I feel a little out of place with this one, as you two graciously ended us off on a positive note. So thank you for that. Fortunately, this one's going to bring the vibe just down a little bit. I did some research because I was just curious of the worst tropical storms in history. I found out that the 1970 BHOLA cyclone, also known as the Great Cyclone of 1970, or simply the Bola cyclone, was the deadliest tropical cyclone on record, as well as one of the deadliest humanitarian disasters ever recorded. It struck East Pakistan, present-day Bangladesh, and India's West Bengal, Bengal, on November 12th, 1970. At least 300,000 people died in the storm.
Oh my gosh.
Possibly as many as 450, primarily as a result of the storm surge that flooded much of the low-lying islands of the Ganges Delta? Ganges Delta.
I think it's Ganges.
Ganges Delta, thank you. So, thank you. I don't know. I am sucky at reading. Fatalities range from 300,000 to 500,000, and damages are estimated to be 86.4 million and 1970 US dollars. Areas affected are East Pakistan and India. So that's Sam's fun facts.
Yes, that one was not so fun, but it definitely was a fact. And so again, hurricanes can hit, anywhere where there is some nice warm water. Hurricanes are not just something, they can hit in the US, they can hit obviously in the Caribbean, and in Southern Asia as well. So, there's no place on earth that is exempt from any type of natural disaster. So we all have to, just kind of be cognizant and keep an eye on things. But I'm Kylie.
I'm Payton.
And this has been Fires of Change.